What's going on, y'all? It's your boy Cool Colas here, and you are now tuning into a new video on my channel. But before we get all into the topic, I would love for you to do a few things. Hit the subscribe button if you are not already subscribed to my channel. Hit the like button, hit the share button, hit the bell icon so that you get notifications for whenever I come out with new content. And when you are finished with all of this, make sure that you go and you leave me a comment below. That way I can respond to it when I get the opportunity. For today's topic, I want to talk about controlled opposition. Specifically, why controlled opposition works against people who are pro-black and not racist. So when it comes to controlled opposition, I think that we need to, first of all, define what that means. And when we talk about controlled opposition, we're talking about it in terms of media. When you see controlled opposition narratives, and I might relate it to a real world experience as well too. Controlled opposition is typically, in terms of anti-blackness we're talking about here, controlled opposition is when you have this image of empowerment that's supposed to be taking place. So it's the image of somebody tackling or addressing something that's related to racism itself, or trying to just discuss racism on a show or on a movie or that type of thing in some type of televised media. But it's under the guise, of course, that it's not created or portrayed by blacks alone. It's usually a white person who's at the top, somebody who's very corporate, a producer, that type of thing, who is allowing these images to actually go out. So a lot of the controlled opposition narratives that I see, they're meant to, and I think this is what they're going for, they're meant to tackle racism, or at least it gives the perception that they're tackling racism, when in actuality, all they're simply trying to do is insult real pro-blacks or real pro-black movements. And let me tell you what I mean by that. Whenever you see a controlled opposition narrative, this is typically what happens. It gives you, from the most blatant standpoint, it gives you an image of somebody tackling empowerment, but there's a lot of really negative anti-black tropes in the background and these little disrespectful things that run counter to the main message that's being portrayed. So let me tell you what I mean by that. Notice that when you typically see a black movie, television show, or something that's televised at all that creates this controlled opposition narrative, it's usually a black woman who is at the forefront. And most of the time, this black woman is either LGBTQIA+, or she is interracially dating. It's usually one of those two things. You hardly ever see her with a black man. As a matter of fact, a black man is not in the picture at all. And if he is even in the story, he ends up becoming the antagonist. So most of the time you see a black woman who is at the forefront of being pro-black. And the reason why they do this is because they want to portray the image. When I say they, I'm talking about white supremacists. They want to portray the image that black women are supposed to be at the forefront of empowerment for the black community, that they're supposed to be the backbone of the black community. This is a message that has been broadcasted over and over and over again, as if black men, specifically masculine black men, are not there to basically try to run counter to racist and anti-black narratives that are out there, that black women are supposed to lead the charge for that. And that's not to say that there aren't codified sisters, are there? There are, and we very much respect those sisters who are doing that. But at the same time, I think that it shows that they're trying to distort the quote-unquote roles, for lack of better words, of black people in society. So they don't want to see black men at the forefront of trying to create empowering agendas, so trying to do things that are empowering for black society. The reason why this is very important is because in all of these controlled opposition narratives, they literally go out of their way to make sure that black men are not present in them. And some good examples of this are Dear White People. That's one good example of a controlled opposition movie / television show. You have, I believe it's called The Hate You Give. That's also another example of a controlled opposition movie. Another example is a scene from Proud Family, Louder and Prouder. In all those examples, you either had a black woman at the forefront, or you had a black woman who was trying to portray something that was empowering, but a black man was not present in this in the whole thing, as far as like them trying to have like this group of who's empowering. So it's not just them, they have a group with them. And in most of those situations, at least 2 out of 3 that I just named, the black person, the black woman that is, who's supposed to be at the forefront of being pro-black, is to some extent either interracially dating, or she is just not, she's not with anybody. So in the case of, I think, the Proud family, Penny Proud is not with anybody, but the main character of Dear White People was with somebody who was white, and then in The Hate You Give, they put her with somebody who was white at some point. And it's funny because she actually started off with a brother. The brother got killed. It was a young brother. He got killed, Star's character. And then she ended up with a white boy who had some microaggressions even. So it was kind of funny how they did that. They love to put a black woman at the forefront. They love to make it seem like she's very pro-black, but then she contradicts her ideals by, again, doing things such as interracial dating. And I'm not trying to hate on anybody who interracially dates. I'm just simply saying that they're not trying to show the unity between a black woman and a black man. If anything, a lot of these times the black man is actually seen as an antagonist. And that's another thing. In movies such as The Hate You Give, the villains weren't the white supremacists who killed her black boyfriend, her ex-boyfriend who was black, because that's what the whole movie was supposed to be centered around. The villains ended up being the thugs that were in the neighborhood that were black. So they were focusing on that aspect. In Dear White People, they talk about hoteps and things like that. So they're focusing on how black men are a problem in black society and the intersectional issues. But a real pro-black movement is supposed to focus on what is anti-black, which is white supremacy. But it's not necessarily focusing solely on white supremacy. It's trying to tackle all of these different things. And the reason why I said that that is a shot at pro-blacks is because it undermines this uniform movement to only tackle white supremacy. We need to, whatever problems that we got in our society, we need to deal with them later. We really need to make sure that we are unified and we are talking about white supremacy. And that's something that does not go on. In the depiction that was shown in Proud Family, Louder and Prouder, they had this whole, there was one episode where they had this whole, I guess, presentation that Penny and her friends were putting on. And during this presentation, they were all on this stage and they were talking about how slaves built this country. Now, I could break that down even further and talk about how problematic the message was and what they were trying to do. But this was a great example of controlled opposition. Because one thing I noticed is that although Penny was not with anybody, period, whether they were black, whether they were white, whether they were male, whether they were female, I noticed that there were no black men who were giving the presentation with her, outside of one black man who was gay. And that's another thing too. They don't like a lot of straight black men to be in those types of positions. So the only person who was black, who was a male there, he was gay. And then they had a white woman there, or white girl there, in the Zoe character, which is actually very funny because you hardly ever see any whites actually talking about reparations, because one thing she talked about in this presentation was reparations, but they were having her there as if she was supporting the reparations movement, but you hardly ever see whites actually supporting that. And because think about it, you should see the number of trolls and male supremacists that even come on my videos here and get mad anytime I talk about reparations, even in the slightest. Not one of them comes on and defends the fact that black people deserve reparations, because we do, specifically foundational black Americans. So for a show to go out of their way to put a white person there as if that is even remotely true, that tells you a lot about what they're trying to do. And this translates a lot of times into modern day depictions as well too. And that's why you see things like the Black Lives Matter movement was a great example of this controlled opposition. You know, you had these 3 women who were basically like mascots for the movement, and they ended up getting all of these funds, all this money and things like that, just to not do anything for black society, and then just fizzled out. So it was all about profiting off of empowerment. But it gave you the illusion that they were trying to do something empowering, but ultimately they really didn't do anything. But even if you look on the website for Black Lives Matter, when they start describing what it's about, who they advocate for, black men are actually never listed, but they intersectionally break down all the different black people who they claim they advocate for. So they went through all these different types of people, you know, black women and black people who were trans and things like that. But then black men were exclusively crafted out of that. So apparently they don't care about the entire intersection. They just care about the people who they feel they want to pander to. So those who they want to pander to in the intersection. So I think the point that I'm trying to make is controlled opposition is dangerous because it gives other people the image that white people are producing messages that allow black people to be codified, meaning that there are white people who are on our side trying to fight this fight with us in these big corporations, when that is far from true. And it's definitely far from true in places like Disney, for example, that are portraying a proud family louder and prouder. These types of things aren't going on there. And they try to make it seem like there's white people who are behind us in getting tangible resources and things like that for black people, when that is far from true. And I think that it makes it seem like what is being said is the world showing that it's changing in a positive way that's supposed to help black society, when in actuality it's a false image of empowerment. Real empowerment comes from people who are pro-black, who go out there and they speak about reparations and they do things politically to try to get it. They try to run for office, or they try to support politicians, people who vote for people who are going to help give tangibles to black society, people who want to create strategies to try to put more money and wealth into the black community. Those are the types of individuals who are doing real empowering black things, not these little symbolic messages that you see on television that are not anything. They're nothing burgers. They don't help black society whatsoever. They don't help foundational black Americans whatsoever. And that's what controlled opposition really ends up doing at the end of the day. It's just the facade of creating a narrative that is empowering, but it is not true empowerment. Now, the other thing that sometimes happens as well too is on these controlled opposition shows and movies, or even like just scenes that they have like in certain television shows, they sometimes do this almost opposites attract race play type of thing sometimes too. Like what I mean by that is they'll have a black woman, because it's basically almost always a black woman, and they'll put her with somebody who's white, and that white person they'll put her with will either be super privileged, they'll spew a whole bunch of microaggressions, or they'll just be blatantly damn racist. And then it's almost like this conflict that they're kind of bringing up. It's almost this thing of we're so different. I'm this empowering activist, and you're this speculated white supremacist. And here we are fighting and clashing, and then they have a night of passion, and then now they're having sex and all this other type of stuff. They love to do stuff like that. They especially did it in the television show Queen Sugar with the Nova character, because the Nova character was supposed to be like a Black Lives Matter activist, but then she had this ongoing, like on and off relationship with this white man named Calvin, who first of all made her his mistress while he was in a relationship, or while he was married actually to a white woman. He was a police officer, and he actually was an assistant in brutalizing a black man and paralyzing him, a 19-year-old black man. He wasn't really sorry about it like that. He just was kind of apologetic because he wanted Nova back, and he didn't want to not date Nova anymore. So there was that as well too. And she ends up basically, getting back with him and dumping a black man just so she could be with him. So think about that though. You have this Black Lives Matter activist who is, or activist, whatever, and this white police officer who actually took place in police brutality to a black man. And she wants to get with him and eventually has babies with him. Isn't that the most absurd thing? That's what I'm talking about, y'all. It's just that controlled opposition shit. It's not real empowerment. No real empowerment, especially symbolic messages, are going to come from white folks, especially speculated white supremacists in these big production corporations and things like that. Now, some of you are going to listen to this video, you're going to be like, Queen Sugar is that Oprah. Oprah is a high-paid tool of white supremacy, y'all. A high-paid tool. So please don't start that shit either. But anyway, that's the video. I hope y'all enjoyed the topic. I hope y'all enjoyed what I had to say. I probably will have more on the topic, but this is what I wanted to tell you all today. Anyway, I hope y'all have a good rest of y'all's day, and I'll talk to you later. Peace.